Hey guys, Toolman Tim here. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. It's January 27th, 2022. Got that right this time. And this is episode 62 of the Workshop Podcast. And it's the 8th episode in our ongoing series on preparedness. Excuse me. So, how's everybody's week been going? We have been busy. Haven't had a whole lot of snow per se, but that's what kind of inspired this episode. So we're going to dive in here in just a minute, but I just got a couple of quick announcements to get out of the way. So as always, first off, I've been plugging this a little bit, trying to get some of the community to go over there. But if you're a Telegram user, grab the link from the description, whether you're listening to this on the podcast, on YouTube, Float, wherever you happen to be, and join us over on the Telegram chat group. It's going to be the official meeting place for the workshop community, where we can sit around and have an ongoing chat. Maybe if it gets big enough, we'll do kind of a regular everyday or like once a week regular chat or something like that. But yeah, we will have that going. Now, this week, guys, tonight we are live on the Prepper Broadcast Network as well. Always love my Thursday night. Get a real big boost in the audience. So if you've missed, if you haven't been following along, or if you're coming just in from the workshop community, give yourself a chance and check out the Prepper Broadcast Network. They've got, I can't even remember how many content creators we have over there. Hey, Chicken Hawk. Hey, Charlotte, how are you? Give them a shot. Go by there, check that out. This week, I usually try to plug somebody else's stuff that's over there, but Monday night was Preppers Live with James and I. We had an off-the-wall conversation. We talked about supply chain issues, entrepreneurship, independence, freedom, and everything else. We basically talked about everything we weren't going to talk about, and it was one of the best episodes I've done in a long time. A lot of fun. So check that out. And I haven't talked about this in a while, but if you guys are ever looking for gear or tool recommendations, because I get emails, chats, IMs, the whole works from people all the time, like, hey, Tim, have you tried this? Or Tim, have you tried that? Like, I've got a winter boot right now that is starting to do the dog tongue thing when it walks, the sole flaps on it. And if you're looking for a good recommendation, try Shoe Goo. If you haven't used it before, that shit, it's like Frank's Red Hot. I put that shit on everything. But seriously, run by toolmantim.shop. And right now, I'm just in the process of adding about 150 more products that I've used over the years that they have the Toolman Tim seal of approval. And the best part is, even if you don't buy one of those products, if you just start your shopping at toolmantim.shop, it supports this content and helps me make a living off of my content. So thank you, guys. So like I said, how has the weather been for you? We have had more snow this winter than we normally have the rest of basically in 5 months. Any other year, we've had more snow in 3 months so far. So Brian at the Lots Project says he knows nothing about winter weather. What's that? Yeah. So we've been working our way through the systems of the home, and I thought it was time to break things up a bit. I always had plans of going through and talking about the four main types of weather, that can really affect the home system, be it snow, rain, fire, and snow, rain, fire, and there's a fourth one that I can't think of right now. Wind, there we go. Snow, rain, fire, and wind. So we're going to deal with them down the road, but I thought, you know what? Let's just kind of intersperse things, spruce things up, liven things up for us a bit. So this all came from, all you need to know is it sucks, and I only get a little. Yeah, I get it. So last Thursday, a week ago tonight, we were, it was a beautiful day, an absolutely warm day. And the day before had been minus 32. So the ground was froze solid. And what happens around here when it goes from really cold to really warm, well, I say really warm, I mean just above zero, basically, just above freezing, it starts sucking the frost out of the ground. So it's almost like if you're inside of a walk-in freezer, and when you run your hands along the freezer doors, there's always feels like there's that thin layer of frost on there. Well, that's what happened. It warmed up, and this never happens. I've talked to a lot of people in my area. It warmed up, and then we got 4 hours of rain in January. This was unheard of. It was basically a once every decade or once every 2 decade kind of situation. If Chris is in here, Chris Dixon still, I don't know if they got it down his way as bad as we did or not, but we were basically storm stayed in our town for 2 to 3 days, depending on where you lived. Now, I know I always say I live on the prairies, but we have a hill that you have to go up to get from any direction, all 4 directions. You basically got to come up a hill to get to our town. So the only people that could come or go were semis with chains on their tires. And it was the 899. That's a highway heading north of here. It's a secondary highway where my brother-in-law lives. And I wish we'd actually done this. Apparently, there are some videos on TikTok of people ice skating on the highways. But it was so bad. I mean, we barely keep any salt here anyway, because we mainly use sand, and it mainly blows off because once it gets cold, it's not an issue. And it was an absolute mess. We ran out of salt. They had to bring salt in from Saskatoon. It was till Monday before they could. So it was really Thursday through Sunday before you could even safely travel in our area. It was honestly a little scary. I mean, I enjoyed it kind of because we didn't have to go anywhere, right? But so that's kind of what brought this on, because, you know, I do snow removal for people. And if you guys follow me on social media, you know, one of my favorite things to do is to buy seasonal products at the end of the season to save a metric shit ton of money. And I did that last year. This year, salt, 10 kilogram, 22 pound bags of salt is, they're $8 a bag. I bought them last spring for 74 cents a bag. I bought an entire pallet of it. And in all the years I've been doing snow removal, I may have used an entire pallet in the first 5 years. I've used that entire pallet now, and I've bought another half a pallet already, and I'm down to like 6 bags. So we've had a lot of snow and ice. And Ted says, we got to bring this one up here. I've winter storm stayed in Florida for the last 22 years. That's why we have a lot of our snowbirds that fly south and storm stay themselves down there. So yeah, it's winter, right? What are you going to do? We live in Canada. I live in Canada. Most of you don't, but it's kind of the way it goes. We have to deal with it sometimes. And this kind of like snow and ice and rain and just this complete shit of a mess, it's kind of common on the East Coast, but growing up, I never saw something quite like this, where the literal surfaces had turned to an ice rink. I took some pictures. They didn't turn out great, but everything had kind of this shine to it because it was just absolutely deadly. Oh, it was awful. Anyway, now, if you guys live in an area where it snows, think back. I always remember, I don't know why it was this, I remember this first time, but it was one of the first years that I had started driving, and I was in the local Sobeys grocery store, and it just started snowing. And it was late coming that year, and it was the first snowstorm of the year. And it almost feels like a panic, like when, you know, in the old-fashioned, old-timey movies, and they, how do you put it? They always have a run on the bank, you know, and everybody, all of a sudden you just see the panic, right? And that's what all I could see. And that, to me, when the first snowstorm comes, there's just this panic, this collective panic amongst so many people, because it's like they lose their ever-loving minds. And it's like, it's like they've never driven before in snow, even though in a little while they'll be old, you know, an old hat at it again, right? But it's always the worst, because when that very first storm comes, sometimes people don't have the winter tires on, some whatever, right? And it's just a friggin' mess. And Ted says it's 77 degrees here today. Well, it probably hit close to 40 here today. We've had some beautiful weather, but it was, yeah. Anyway, so the cold weather, yeah. Ted says, Charlotte, you got to get your dad to move to South Florida. Maybe, I don't know, man. I think this bald head of mine would probably burn in the sun, but anyway. So we're going to start out, you know, I love to make my lists, and I've got a lot of stories tonight, so I hope you guys enjoy my stories. But because, you know, I spend half my life in snow or whatever. So, so the big three, there's 4 fingers, Tim. The big 3 that we end up dealing with snowstorms. Number 1 is heavy snow. So years ago, it was back in 2004, I want to say 2003, 2004, we had a winter storm that we called White Juan. And in retrospect, that's kind of a weird name. But the reason is because the previous September, we had a hurricane called Hurricane Juan. And then like 4 months later, in early February, late January, we had hurricane strength winds. This was in Nova Scotia, along with snow. We ended up getting like 2 inches of snow per hour for 12 hours. And when it was all said and done, we had way over 3 feet of snow. And I remember there was drifts. There's Charlotte knows all about the yeah, you know what? I'm going to right here, Brian, this is a great tip. He says, I try to call in sick to work on the first snowfall of the year, just to shit show on the roads every year. Yep. That is a great tip right there. And yeah, so there's a pizza place that has a second floor balcony, and there was drifts that were up over the second floor balcony. So there are times when heavy snow is just in the forecast and you got to deal with it. And, you know, on the East Coast growing up, when it was it's just a common thing to just kind of wait it out, just deal with it as you can. But so the other day when I was so there's a bunch of different things that you got to think about with heavy snow around the home, and, just to make things so you don't have a bad day, you don't end up with a roof collapsing or, the works. But so the first thing, the other day when I was shooting my video to test the propane heater, the new a Big Buddy heater that I had. I was out in my wife's she shed. Try saying that 5 times fast. And I noticed, even though it has a snow load kit on it, that the rear roof, the south facing roof, had a sag in it because there was so much snow on it. I didn't notice it, so I got my roof rake out and I cleaned it off. But if you don't notice it, especially when it's really wet and heavy snow, you can end up having a collapsed roof or a collapsed garage, or worse, a lot more common will be like your gazebos out back, or sometimes you have those awnings that stick out from the house, or even say somebody scabbed on a porch for you and all they used was like those Exolite panels, those corrugated white and green panels that everybody had in the 80s. They're more prone to collapse. So just keep an eye on that heavy snow, because it can surprise you. I remember the the Fish and Game in my hometown ended up having the roof collapse because of too much snow on it. So, Peyton says 6 feet of snow over here. And where is that? Because that's insane. We've got 18 inches, had 18 inches on the ground. But so make sure you have the gear on hand to dig yourself out. The worst thing is to end up getting behind doors, especially if you get an oat swing. If you got an oat swing door and you've got so much snow there, you got to go out, like say your second story window. Just have a plan in mind, right? Keep your gutters clean. This is one of those I talk about all the time. But before fall hits, or when fall gets in there, get the hell up a ladder and get your gutters clean, because I dealt with a bunch. Well, actually today I was out with my roof rake for a customer, and their eaves were just clogged up with junk. They iced up, they rolled over, and then what you end up getting is an ice dam. And then that water and ice back up underneath your shingles and eventually can make their way into the house. So if you can keep as much of that running, keep it going. Have a good night, Ted. I figured where it was snow, I wouldn't see a whole lot, but that's all right. Peyton, Quebec, yes. Yeah. We're going to talk about the ice storm a little later on from Quebec. But now, another thing is, if it's early, if the leaves haven't fallen yet, keep an eye out for those heavy branches, because it's way, way worse when the leaves are still on the trees and you get that heavy snow on there. That's when you're going to have limbs break. That's when you're going to have limbs sag and knock out power lines. It's just a mess. So we always hope that we get our first snowfall after all the leaves fall here, but it normally does happen. Now, that white wand snowstorm that we ended up having, I remember Poe, that was one of my best friend's grandfathers, who's kind of like a surrogate grandfather for me. I remember going over to visit him in the middle of the snowstorm, and he was out there in an absolute blizzard, whiteout, shoveling his driveway. And I said, what in the hell are you doing this for? Because it's literally blowing up a storm. You're not doing any good. And he said, well, I'm old. My body's frail. He said, I got to keep on top of it. And that was something I have adopted over the years. And that's one of the things, if you know you have a lot of snow coming and you need to keep a path open to, say, your garage or to your vehicle to get out or whatever it happens to be, then do it in stages. Like, go out while it's snowing and clear it out and keep on top of it. And, you might work like 5 times as long, but you're going to end up working half as hard. And that was always that always stuck with me. I remember that the old guy, he was just out there in the snowstorm shoveling away, and I'm like, it's just going to drift in. He says, yeah, but if I don't stay on top of it, I won't be able to do it at all. So something to think about. Now, cold temps, that's the next one. For us this year, I didn't realize this, but we actually broke a record. And this, of course, could be extreme in different areas, and a lot of you aren't going to deal with it quite this bad. But yet, Cabot says absolutely stay on top of it, especially. So here's the thing: we're going to talk about snowblowers and stuff like that later on. But if you don't have the gear, if all you have is a shovel, the last thing you want to do is end up dealing with the all of the snow at once, because that's like heart attack snow. You're going to break your shovel. I remember last year, just before I'd bought my snowblower, we had our first snowstorm of the year, and I left it. And I have this one accessibility ramp that I have to do, and it had drifted over about 4 feet deep, 3.5 feet deep, with a crust on top. And I just sat there and I thought, if I have to do this by hand, I'm probably going to die. I can't do this. So have the gear for it, but stay on top of it. Even if you got to do it 10 or 12 times, your body's going to thank you, and your gear is going to thank you. But so this year we ended up out here. I love talking about the cold weather, but we ended up having a streak. This was the longest streak since 1969. I had to look it up. But from Christmas Day to New Year's Eve, the daytime high never got above -20. Now, I would have thought we had longer streaks than that, but no, this was the longest streak since 1969. So what do we got? 31, 51, 53 years almost. And there's so much to worry about. But the big thing, especially if your vehicle isn't acclimatized to the cold, figure out a way to keep it warm. If you got a garage, put it in the garage and keep it warmed up. Keep an eye on your pipes. If it's going to be really cold and you live in an area that you don't have a shit ton of insulation on your pipes, leave them drip. Let them drip for a little while. It doesn't hurt. I mean, I have a guy that he called me. He lives in a mobile home, and he always leaves his water dripping, but his roommate turned it off, and of course it froze solid. But I can't exactly explain the physics behind it, but if you leave water running, it's a little harder for it to freeze. So if it's going to get really cold overnight, this might sound like it's counterintuitive, but leave your taps dripping hot and cold just a little bit. It doesn't have to be a lot, and that can keep the water free, and then you're good to go once it warms up a bit. Another area that people forget about all the time is underneath your sinks. So they're always kind of compact and enclosed. And a lot of times they have either like access, especially in mobile homes, again, they have kind of access where your pipes come in from the basement, or they tend to be on an exterior wall. So if it's going to be really, really cold, before you go to bed at night, just open up the doors to, say, underneath your kitchen sink, underneath your bathroom sink, any of those areas that can be confined that can get really cold. Because in my experience, I've dealt with a lot of frozen pipes under there, and a lot of frozen drain lines too, because the P-trap under there that holds water to trap the gases out, well, that doesn't move unless you're running water through it. And so it sits overnight and it freezes solid. So just leave that open. And if you have to, if it's really cold and you live in a really rickety old place, you can always have a space heater just kind of pushed in against it. Make sure you're not going to catch something on fire, but a space heater can work like a charm. And then, always make sure your smoke and CO detectors are up and running, because your furnace is going to be working way too hard. And sometimes it works so hard that it ends up wanting to shut down. So do what you can to make sure it's up and running and doing well. And then, of course, whether it's cold temperatures, whether it's way too much snow, stay the hell home. I remember the Nova Scotia Premier last year. This was he said, stay the blazes home, and it stuck. It became a kind of a catchphrase for everybody. Yes, Brian says, I got that on a list later on electric heat trace on pipes. So if you have a pipe that you don't have a way to insulate, or that is, say, on an exterior wall or is in a crawl space, get yourself some of this heat trace tape. And like, I know it doesn't happen that often, but even like Nicole and those guys that live down in Tennessee, they often enough have things freeze up on them that something like that might be helpful. And what I like about the heat trace tapes, the heat trace electrical cords, they have a lit end. So I've got a couple that are under mobile homes, and all I got to do is pull off the access door, get my head down there, look in. Okay, it's lit up. I know it's working. To me, that is perfect engineering. Now, so we had way too much snow. We have way too much cold. And then the third thing in the winter is the way too much ice. That's the shit I really hate. And I remember I would have been, let's see, 1998, 17, 16 or 17. And we had the ice storm. We got the tail end of it in Nova Scotia, but Quebec ended up having the worst ice storm in its history. It was kind of like a civil disaster, and they brought in the military. And it was actually, I did some reading on this because it's been a while and I'd forgot about it. It was actually 5 small ice storms in a row. So they just kind of hit one after the other after the other. They ended up losing 1,000 transmission towers, 35,000 power poles, and there was people that didn't have power for 2 weeks. Now, again, that is a once in a lifetime storm, I hope, but it isn't out of the ordinary. And it's the type of thing that's kind of scary, you know? So Chicken Hawk says, yes, I got to add an outlet under the new house to add some of that and some lights. Yeah. And so that's another thing too, guys. Don't underestimate the heat that 100-watt light bulb can kick out. I've used them. I use them for heaters in a chicken coop before. I've used them in an area where I just needed enough heat to keep like the frost off the pipes and that kind of stuff. But yeah, and that's something else people don't always think about is remember to have power and accessibility underneath of places, you know, access hatches and things like that. Or, you know, if you have livestock, make sure you have somewhere to plug in heat trace tape for their waterers and things, because those things are prone to freeze up. But yes, so when you're dealing with the ice, the biggest thing for me is just don't slip, don't hurt yourself, don't kill yourself. Get yourself a set of those grippers that go on the bottom of your shoes. Those are awesome. Just don't forget and keep them on when you go inside on a hard cement floor, because they used to make us wear them in the oil patch, and they were great until I had to get up on the side of the rig, which is, you know, 1/4-inch sheet metal or whatever. And then all of a sudden you're slipping and sliding and falling on your ass. So there's a tool for everything, but just make sure you use it where you need to use it. Have a rescue kit in your vehicle. And did I mention stay the hell home, especially if it's icy? And if you end up going off the road, one of the scary things, or one of the things everybody says, I wish I didn't have to do it, but stay in your vehicle. It's your warmest spot. It's so easy to get, especially if the wind's blowing, it's snowing. It's so easy to get turned around, twisted around, and end up getting lost. And most people end up succumbing to the elements simply because they get out of their vehicle. There was that one guy that ended up, living off of Taco Bell hot sauce packets for a few days. I don't think he got a whole lot of nutrients out of it, but he stayed in his vehicle and he survived, and he made the right choice. It can be difficult. And I think that would be where your mind would it would wander and play tricks on you. Like, I got to get up and get out of here, you know, but almost every time somebody does that, they end up not making it. So just remember. So we're going to touch on 10 quick things, 10 quick areas of preparedness around the home and around your community when you're dealing with winter storms. So first thing, number one, getting started the day before the storm. So as preppers, a lot of times we just end up making the decisions 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours before everybody else. You know, we all wonder, should I or shouldn't I? Should I act? Should I not act? Should I do it? Should I not do it? You know, like when COVID and everything started a couple of years ago, you know, I was like, do I want to stock up on medicines? No, yes, no. Anyway, you know, you end up pulling the trigger and you're doing it, right? So staying ahead of the curve. And we're, like Brian said, he likes to call in sick for the first day of the winter storm, the very first time it snows. And this is absolutely it, because everybody acts like a collective idiot. There's no other way to put it. They just, you know, everybody's crazy. So if you look and you see, okay, 2 days out, there looks like there's a storm coming. Well, keep an eye on the forecast, right? But have your food already. So if you got to get groceries the day before, not the day of. Everybody waits till the day of. They're like, oh, I'll get it on my way home. You know what I mean? Top up the gas tank. I know everybody hears me harp on keeping your gas tank full, but it should never go below half a tank. It doesn't cost any more to keep a full tank than it does to keep a half a tank once it's full, right? So watch out for idiot drivers, and there's going to be a lot of them. So if you have to be on the road the day of the storm, just give everybody extra space, give everybody extra patience. That, to me, it's the only way to do it, because it's not your fault that everyone else is a bad driver, but there's a lot of bad drivers out there. 2 days out, if you go on the Weather Network, they're like, oh, you got 30 centimeters, sorry guys, 12 inches of snow coming. Okay, go out to the generator, start your generator, make sure the battery is topped up, make sure the gas tank is full and has fresh fuel in it, make sure it's going to run, because even though you test it all the time, it is absolutely, just get out there and test it. You're going to have peace of mind, because there's nothing worse than your family being indoors, cold, the lights are out, you're out in the garage and it's snowing and spitting, or worse than that, you're outdoors and you're trying to get that gosh darn generator to start, and the damn thing just won't start. So make sure it's going to start, because it's way easier to tinker and solve problems 2 days before the storm than it is when the stress is on. Brian says the absolute worst is when the first snow is in the middle of the day and it starts after work rush hour. And so it starts after. Oh, absolutely. Yes, you are right. I don't know what it is, but yeah, everybody does get even worse when you're already in town or you've already gone to work and then the snow starts. It just, I don't know, people panic. It's just this collective mindset of craziness. And growing up on the East Coast, and it's not as bad in Alberta, because most times our first snow is just a dusting. But yeah, when you live in an area, anyway, it's miserable. So if you're the type that change from summer to winter tires, get it done in like the end of September, because what ends up happening is the day they call for the storm, everybody calls their local tire shop and they're like, can I get my winters put on? Or, even better yet, buy yourself an extra set of rims, keep them on there, and do your swap out yourself so you can control it. Do it on a Sunday afternoon in October when it's warm. Don't have to make an appointment. Doesn't cost you anything, prescriptions. I mean, this one just goes without saying, but in theory, we should have 3 to 6 months of prescriptions on hand all the time anyway. However, I had a new prescription that I hadn't had time to stock up on yet, and I ended up almost running out, not because I didn't try to get in early, but because I couldn't get in early, and then they canceled my appointment twice. So always have some on hand, but if you need to fill it, go to the pharmacy 2 days before. You see kind of a pattern here. Just stay ahead of the curve, right? Now, again, I talked about this in a couple of my fall videos, but walk your yard. If there's anything that shouldn't be down that could end up being a tripping hazard, or worse, say a power cord that you could suck into your generator, ask me how generator that you could suck into your snowblower, ask me how I know. Clean all that shit up off the ground ahead of time so that it doesn't become a hazard and it doesn't make a bad day into a really bad day once the snow starts flying. Inspect your power outage kit, because if a big heavy snow is expected, expect a power outage. So make sure your batteries are charged up, make sure you got all your flashlights, what you need, have a plan in place, right? And then if you do end up losing power, dress in multiple layers. That's the one thing. That's a big one. We're going to talk about that a little bit more down the road, especially if you end up, being alone or, by yourself in the dead of cold. There's a bunch of things that we can do to kind of help that, right? And a lot of it has to do with planning. But then have the right tools. Number 2, have the right tools. And there's a lot of fun, specific tools that I get to play with out here on the prairies, simply because shit freezes all the time. But if you don't have a heat gun, get a heat gun. And if you can't get a heat gun, you can always use a blow dryer. I actually picked up, I haven't done a review on it yet because I don't know what I think, but I actually picked up a cordless Dewalt heat gun not too long ago. And it doesn't have the full power that a plug-in 1500 watt one has. But you know what? I kind of like it. Again, it's Dewalt, it's cordless, but it gives out more than enough heat to do what I need. I used it the other day for those shrink connectors for electrical, but it also works for thawing things out. So I'm going to play with it some more. You'll see a review. Brian talked about heat tape already because he was sneaking a peek at my notes. So we don't have to talk about that a whole lot. But especially if you live in an area where it tends to go from snow to warm, get yourself some ice melt, because anything you can do to accelerate getting rid of the snow or getting rid of the ice is just going to make your life safer and better real quick. And liability too. You got to remember that. But, get out, salt your walkways. And actually, there's a cool product now that is a liquid ice melt, which kind of seems like it defeats the purpose, but it's a pre-treatment, and I haven't tested it yet. I bought some and haven't used it. The local hardware store sells it, and you put it in a spray bottle, like a what do you call it? Like a weed spray bottle, and you go out and you spray it all over the sidewalks, and you do a pre-treatment of your sidewalks. And if it's just going to be like a, say, a quarter inch or a half an inch of snow or something like that, it'll actually melt it as it falls, and it keeps you from having to clear a lot of stuff. So it's kind of neat. Traction sand. So if you're like I am, where it gets too cold to use ice melt, get yourself some traction sand and make sure it's the good shit. The local farm store sells this stuff that's no better than powdered sugar. You throw it down and it practically disappears. Like it's really fine, almost like play sand, and it's not worth anything. Get something real hefty with some gravel to it. Check your insulation situation. If you need to, pick up some pipe insulation, wrap it, do what you need. Get yourself some shoe grippers. Those guys are awesome, and they're usually pretty cheap, but you buy a pair, they're going to last you forever anyway. But remember, get yourself a pair that'll fit around your boots, because, my size 14 foot, you put a big winter boot on that and the thing's about, 12 feet long, and you could water ski with it. So you need to make sure you get the right size grippers for the bottom of your shoes. Have a shovel, and then another shovel and another shovel, because if all you have is shovels, you're going to break one. There's just no getting around it. I always break one, especially in that heavy, old, wet snow. My dad always growing up, he had a scoop. So you pushed it in, it would take a big chunk of the snow out and get rid of it. Brian says, did you say kitty litter if you can't find sand? Yes. So kitty litter will work. Ash out of a furnace, as long as you didn't burn, say, scrap wood with nails in it, will work as well. But yes, in a pinch, it will. I mean, this kind of stuff breaks down quicker, but if you need some grip, it'll do it. Absolutely. Make sure you have it. If you're getting older, or you just you get a lot of snow, have a good plow or have a good snowblower. You guys are going to see this month, community member spotlight is Tom from Small Scale Life, and he's got a really cool snow tool that he uses on a regular basis. So I don't want to give away his I don't want to give away his thunder, but it's a really good one. Weather radio, you just gotta walk. You gotta follow the weather, man. And for us up here, I actually, like I said, I used it today, a roof rake. And if you haven't seen one, it's just a big kind of rectangle shape of aluminum on 3 long 8-foot poles. So I get about 20-foot reach with the thing, and I can go up on the roof from the ground, and it's on an angle so that I can get back far enough and see. And you can just take chunks, almost like you're cutting igloo blocks out, and you just pull it down off the roof. And it ends up, because this lady, I look after her house for her, she has a low slope metal roof, and this is only the second time in 6 years I've had to do it, but it ends up sitting in there. Oh, hey Souls, how are you? He said, I found the easiest way ever for taking care of sidewalks and driveways is children. Yeah, it works for the Amish and the Mennonites too. But it's true. My father, he has his grandkids out east, and they do almost all the snow for him now. So yes, you're absolutely right. Child labor, it's the best kind, especially when it's family, because child labor laws don't affect you, right? So I have a working chainsaw, man. Like when that snow gets in on the heavy spruce boughs and things start breaking, falling down in your laneway or your driveway, just trim them up and get rid of them. And then not everybody thinks about this, but in the winter, have some plumbing leak repair parts on hand, because if something freezes and bursts or snaps or cracks, and then when things thaw out, all of a sudden you got another problem. Who thinks about a water leak in the middle of something that freezes? But you always got to think about the after effects too, right? Number 3, put together a proper vehicle kit. Booster cables, as thick as you can afford, the best and the thickest and the longest you can find, because you will never say, I wish I'd have bought shorter booster cables, except maybe when you're trying to put them back in the package. But absolutely. Good thing about living in Missouri is that we rarely ever get heavy snow. Well, that's nice, actually. And we don't get a lot in Alberta because it's so dry here. There's not a lot of moisture in the snow. But growing up on the East Coast, we got that. I always call it the heart attack snow. It's nasty, So you guys know the story I told you recently about getting stuck when I was going to look at a bank property. Well, I had a lot of stuff on hand. I was pretty happy with what I had, and what I had did get me out, but it showed me two things that I was lacking in my preps for my vehicle that I need to add, and maybe even a couple other things. But I need a tow strap because two reasons. The other night when it was icy, I came across the salt truck that was in the ditch. So, you know, when your aggregate truck is in the ditch, you're all in trouble. But it made me think, not that I could have towed him out, but if I'd have come across somebody with a smaller vehicle, I would have liked to have been able to tow them out or somebody tow me out. So I'm going to get a tow strap, put it behind the seat. I'm actually working on another video. I'm thinking about going through the back of my Ram 1500 and finding all kinds of small little spots to stash things and kind of do kind of a breakdown video of where everything is. A couple other things. I need extra wipers too. I didn't have any in the truck. I'm good this time, but recently my son had my other truck and he's not. Hey, John Palmer, how are you? He wasn't as careful with things and the wipers froze and he ended up tearing the rubber right off them. So have an extra set of windshield wipers on hand. And then I need to get a couple of bags of gravel because that was the other thing. Or a bucket or something. I need to keep it in the box of the truck because that, beyond anything else, will help get you unstuck. If you're just kind of high and dry a little bit or on a little bit of shiny ice, or say you spun your wheels a little bit and you get that glassy ice and snow there. Yeah, so I need to get myself a couple of buckets or bags of aggregate. I find if you go with more aggressive stuff, you get better traction. But the other thing is the water doesn't get into it and freeze it into clumps. When you have like full-on sandbags and they lay in the back of your truck all year, when you finally do need them, they're absolutely worthless as shit because the entire bag is now basically 4 solid clumps of nothing. So yeah, get yourself some aggregate or put it in buckets or whatever you need to do, Number 4, there's some simple winter upgrades that we can do to our vehicles as preparedness minded people that can make your life a little bit better. Now, of course, like I said, if you live where, Ted does and your biggest problem is getting sand in your sandals, well, you might not need to worry about this, but inspect and replace your wipers. That's number 1, because you need good ones. And something that I didn't know for a lot of years, and I still don't run them all the time, but they do make winter windshield wipers. They have the rubber boot on them. Every time I say boot, it always cracks me up. But they have the rubber boot on them and a little extra on the blade itself. So it's just made to not get ice in, not freeze up, and also be sturdier, longer to deal with ice and snow buildup. Use -40 washer fluid, at least where I live. But make sure you've switched out before things get cold, because I've known people who have forgot and left summer bug wash in there, and then it froze in their reservoir and split it in half. But if you're like me, I pretty much run -40 year round. It doesn't work quite as good on bugs, but then I don't have to worry about it. Now, if you don't want to run, here we go. Let's see. Martinson family. And how are you, Martinson family? Said Grandpa had a tractor inner tube filled with gravel and tied with heavy wire behind each wheel in his pickup. Great idea, because that did 2 things. Number 1, it gives you extra weight in the vehicle, because the ass end of vehicles tends to be a little bit light, so you're going to get better traction. And if you get stuck, cut that sucker open and use it for gravel. I love that idea. I actually might just have to steal that. So I'll remember that. Yes, we're at 38 minutes, 20 seconds. I'll remember. Anyway, now here's another thing. If you're not into switching your tires out twice a year, then get yourself a good, aggressive all-weather tire. Not all-season tire. Look for all-weather, and they usually have a snowflake on them, which means they're good for summer and winter. But I find with snow and ice, a good, aggressive, knobby tire works really good year round. So yeah. And if you're like us, and years ago, we moved from Nova Scotia out to Saskatchewan, and our vehicle wasn't used to being in the cold. We didn't know any better. And of course, first time it got really cold, we went to start a vehicle. It wouldn't start. So we ended up having to get a battery blanket installed so that our battery would stay warm. Or you can get a block heater put in, which is a plug that goes into the oil pan that heats up the oil. Or you can get like a magnetic pan heater, something that helps warm your vehicle up so that you don't have to, you don't end up with a dead vehicle like my daughter's was the other day. Souls, he says, we always used bags of gravel when I lived in New York. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I know some people that put a load of wood in there just simply because they're like, well, it's firewood. I'll use it at the end of the year too, but it's not very good for traction, but it gives you a lot of extra weight in the truck. And then here's the other thing, and this is what happened to my daughter. Don't forget to plug in your vehicle. So if you live where you need to plug in your vehicle, plug it in. She thought she had it plugged in, but she didn't have it plugged in. So make sure you do. Simple as that. You save yourself so much of a headache by just doing it. The next one's simple, number 5. And this one's tough, but if you're not comfortable, don't friggin' go. Like I said, I went to that bank property and got stuck. And I wasn't really comfortable driving up over the hump, but for some reason, I was just being stupid. I don't know if I was lazy, but I was like, I don't want to walk that extra 40 feet up through that heavy snow. This truck will drive through that. And then I was high and dry, right? So I've had a lot of experience driving in the snow, but you still end up having, a bad day. So I'm going to tell you another little story about the time I had 2 car accidents in one day. So I was driving this old Eagle, I can't even remember, Eagle Summit or something like that. It was just a wicked vehicle. It had the baldest tires on the planet. It was just miserable. And I was working back at a lobster pound. And to get back there was basically a straight hill about 150 feet up. No, I don't know what it was, but it was a straight hill, straight up, and it was always covered in ice and snow. And the only way I could make it is if I got a good runoff on the flat and went straight up the hill. Wow. Okay. This was great. However, I got right to the top one night. It was on my second run. I got right to the top. I'm like, I'm going to make it. And just as I do, a truck's coming over the top. And I'm like, shit. So I have to pull off to the side, slow down. I lose all my momentum and I'm stopped right there. And I'm hitting the gas. And I'm like, oh no. And I have to start going down backwards. But I ended up sliding and sliding and sliding. I went off the edge of the hill and it would have been a good roll. Like I'd have went probably, ass over tea kettle about 12 times. But the car ended up against some alder bushes that held it up. So it was on a 45-degree angle, just sitting there. And it sat all night. I went home. I'm like, I'm not going to work. I'm done. I went home the next morning. I called a local guy named Leonard. And yeah, you're right. I made the mistake of not giving enough gas. That's exactly what it was. You're not wrong. Like I should have just kept flooring it because I would have made it, except the truck was coming over the hill. And I'm like, I panicked. And so I went and I got a buddy. He came and pulled me out, which was great, pulled me up the hill, and everything was a sheet of ice. And so I had to drive back to the lobster pound, turn around, and come back out because obviously there was nowhere else to turn around. So I turn around, I'm heading back. A guy's coming toward me. We both come around a corner on a blind corner. We both hit the brakes and we go grill to grill and bust up his radiator and bust up my radiator, just like that. So 2 accidents in the ice because I was a dumbass, stupid son of a whatever in 12 hours. So it happens. So get used to driving in the winter. And even if you're not comfortable, just stay home. It's not worth it, Let's see what we got here. Chris says, be careful with loose, heavy things in your trunk or box. If you hit the ditch, they become projectiles. Yes, I'd meant to put that in my notes tonight because when I worked in the oil patch, that was a rule that we had. The only thing loose we could have had to be underneath the seat so that it was at least somewhat contained. But you're right, Chris. If you slip, you slide, anything, it can end up being a bad day. So keep an eye on what you have loose. Like make sure it's secured. And again, like that, the guys that would keep a box full of wood in the back of their truck, oh man, anyway, that could be nasty in a bad way. And so Tools with Soul says, Dad used to leave a 100-watt lamp under the hood to keep the battery warm enough to start. That's a great idea. I've heard that from a lot of people. Just don't do what some people do and have it too close to the battery and ends up melting through or causing a fire. But yeah, no, that's a great idea. 100-watt bulbs are getting harder to find, but stock up at the dollar store before they go away completely, right? Number 6, focus on your furnace. I almost sound like I tried to alliterate that a little bit. But make sure your furnace is working ahead of time. If you got a storm coming in a couple of days and you got to, if you know a guy that can come out and give it a good inspection, great. But you probably should have had that inspection done a month ago just to make sure it's up, running, tip top and going, right? Just simple little things. Check the battery in your thermostat because some furnaces, if the batteries die, the furnace will shut off and that could be simple. And can you imagine not being able to run your furnace simply because you forgot to get AAA batteries? And any good prepper worth their salt needs to have batteries on hand anyway, but just friggin' test them. If they're old, replace them. Don't worry about it. If you guys, for the fellers on the East Coast and down in New England, if you're using fuel oil, add a bottle of methyl hydrate to your fuel oil. It's like it basically eliminates the water that's in there. It collects it and gets rid of it. So just think of those things ahead of time. And Martinson family says, yeah, Dad used to carry his 1972 Olympic in the truck for weight. Fair enough. Keep an eye. Oh, yeah. Okay. So here's another one. So if you've got ice or you've got snow built up, all of that, keep an eye on your vents. Okay. And this could be your dryer. This could be your water heater. This could be your high efficiency furnace or a regular furnace, because snow and ice and heat coming out of there is going to cause a lot of drippage and ice and buildup. Now, this can actually be worse for the dryer, because if you're the type of person that doesn't run your dryer, say on a daily basis like we do, or 3 times a day, then what ends up happening is it cools off, snow or ice builds around there, and then it breaks off. And then your dryer has to work harder because it can't get the hot air out, and then it can overheat and blah, 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 fire, And also keep an eye on your chimney, because if it gets blocked off, I had a call the other day for a girl who rents a place that I look after, and she said, my furnace died. I thought, oh my. So I went over, and the first thing I thought of was check the chimney, but there wasn't any ice or anything over there. But that's always the first thing I check. But it was a high efficiency furnace, one of those little tiny blower assemblies I hadn't seen before. Obviously, I have no parts for it. It didn't look much bigger than a friggin' computer power supply fan. And I called the company in and they fixed it. So it was great. John says, my HVAC company comes out twice a year on contract. That's the way to do it. Set it and forget it. Get them to do it, and then you're done, because they know what they're looking for. They see this stuff all the time. And I'm not saying we can't do these repairs, because yeah, there is some stuff that we want to do ourselves. But yeah, if you have a guy coming out, and you know what I like to do if I'm paying somebody to be there, and of course I don't like this when somebody does it to me, but I usually just make small talk and shoot the shit. And I'll usually ask them 2 or 3 questions when they're there, because I always like to learn. And I don't, I try not to be breathing down their neck or anything, but whenever I have a professional at the house, I always try to have them leave with me learning at least one thing from them. And John says, keep your gas tank full. That's an extra 100 to 200. Yep. And you know what? Like, just do it. It doesn't, honestly, it doesn't cost any more to keep something full than it does empty. And that was something my wife and I struggled with for a lot of years, because when you're living below the poverty line, every penny counts. But if you can do it, do it. Keep your vehicle full. And I think that is like the most simple prepper tip out there. But whatever you have, whatever fuel tank it is, once it's full, just pretend like it empty is half, and then fill it up again. And Souls, he says, never run your vehicle below quarter tank, because it can cause, yes, the fuel pump to work too hard and cause you to replace it early. And that is another reason. So not just the chance of running out of gas, not just the chance of being on the side of the road and being freezing because you forgot to stop to the gas station before you went to work in the morning, but it also costs you more money in the long run, because it's harder on your gear. You wear shit out quicker. You can get, when you run your gas tank lower, you get down into what might be sediment in there. You get more water, you get more dirt. You can clog up fuel filters. There's so much stuff that you can end up wrecking simply because you run things on empty all the time. And like I said, I know I'm harping, but it doesn't cost any more to keep it full than to be empty. Number 7, be prepared to shelter in place. So tonight's, I haven't looked in a bit, and I closed it out, but tonight's poll was, have you ever had to shelter in place because of winter weather? So my in-laws, they're our best friends. I love them to death. They work with my wife and her sister. They work together. And then my brother-in-law runs his own mechanic shop, and his mechanic shop is down the bottom of that hill. So the other night, it was coming on time to go home. And I said to my wife, I said, they need to stay here at our place. So anyway, my brother-in-law couldn't even get back up the hill. So he had to stay at his parents' place where his shop is. And my sister-in-law and her 2 boys, they came over, and we had a good old-fashioned sleepover. And it was great, because there's no sense in trying to risk your life if you don't have to. So one thing I got thinking about was we have a bug out, like a bare bones automotive bug out bag. Have a good night, Brian. It's nice having you, man. I always appreciate it. But we only have underwear and socks in there. And I got thinking, I'm like, you know what? A pair of pajamas or day clothes or something, we're going to add to that, because that was something, again, we lent them things, but it was something they didn't have with them. And I love these situations when they happen. I hate that they happen, but always try to learn from a disaster, guys. That's what I always do. Like, do an after incident, just go over it and figure it out and say, okay, evaluation. That's the word I'm looking for, guys. Do an after incident evaluation and figure out what you didn't have, what could have made your life easier, what could have made your preps better, that kind of stuff. So have a change of plan, have a change of clothes on hand in your vehicle. And you know what? Be prepared to help other people. Half the reason, I know we always say, oh yeah, if so-and-so beats on my door, I'm not going to help them because they didn't help themselves. But you know what? Honestly, part of being preppers is we can help other people. When the great toilet paper shortage of 2020 happened, I'm sure people were out there that were able to give people toilet paper, and if we're looked after and warm and hungry and fed, well, you know what? We can open our doors and say, hey, guess what? You guys can't go home. Come and stay with us. You can stay as long as you want. Oh, this is cool. Tools with Souls. He said, 1979, we got trapped in oh my God, we got trapped in our house with 12 feet of snow. School was canceled for a day. Well, I was talking to Ford on Zello today. He's part of the TSP community. Talk to him quite often. And he said recently they had a bit of snow. I don't know what a bit of snow was in Tennessee, but they canceled school for the entire week when it snowed on the weekend. So I was like, oh my goodness, what are you going to say, And yeah, Chris Dixon says, love that. We always say, what did we learn? Our boys roll their eyes, but now they get it. And because every single time, it's like when my wife and I first started camping, we would go, and this is how I would do it. We would go, we'd spend the night. We spent the night at Banff Park one time. It was the very first time we ever camped. And every time I went to look for something that I didn't have, I wrote it on a list in my phone. And when I got back, I went and bought all that stuff. And then the next time we went camping, I did it again. And then I also started, okay, what didn't I need? Why did I need that? That kind of thing. Just do it. Make a list, pay attention, and you learn. And then you get better. And then you can share your knowledge with other people, and you can make your life a little bit better for your family, right? Have a winter power outage plan in place. All kinds of P's tonight. Simple things like don't open your damn back door more than you have to. Don't let your kids stand in the friggin' door and talk to you when they come over to visit, when the power's out and you have no heat in your house. Keep your drapes drawn, keep your windows closed, that kind of stuff. Have backup heat. I just did my test. I just bought not too long ago one of those Big Buddy heaters, and they're great. I love them and they work. Have a CO detector and a smoke detector. Even though I've watched a shit ton of these videos and the reviews, and I've watched firefighters test them, and they say that they're perfectly safe indoors without being vented, it doesn't hurt to say crack a window and have a CO detector around just to be safe, because 2 is 1, 1 is none. And what's the number one rule of survival? If you're dead, you lost. So, have a plan in place. So if you don't have a full complement of backup heat, say you've only got a Big Buddy or a Little Buddy, and they'll only do like 400 square feet. We'll have a plan in place. For us, my plan is hang big, heavy blankets in the living room windows, have everybody in there, or in the living room doors, and have everybody in there. Just know that you're going to, maybe be a little cramped and uncomfortable, but you're going to stay warm and you're not going to die. So that's a bonus. Here's another one that not everybody thinks. So if it's an emergency, say you've lost power and you have no heat to your home, say you got to go to an emergency warming shelter. Well, number one, know where those are. I mean, I always say stay the hell home. So stay home if you can, and dress in layers and that kind of stuff, but know where the emergency warming shelters are. But before you go, turn off your water main to the house and then open your taps to drain them the best you can. Let the water come out, or at least, if nothing else, if you have your taps open and your water freezes, there's a chance it could expand that way instead of out and cracking your pipes. Just something dead simple, guys, but it could end up saving you from having a a slightly bad day to having, you know, a remediation company in to do insurance work for the next 6 months simply because you didn't shut off your water or you didn't leave your taps open. Just kind of simple stuff, right? And did I mention stay the hell home? If you don't have to go anywhere, stay off the roads, right? So here's the next one. Number 9, make sure your snowblower blows and it doesn't suck. So if you have a snowblower, there's a lot of things you can do. Number 1, something I didn't do this year and I should have, and I realized today that I didn't, and I checked it and it's a little dark, but it's not bad. Change your oil in the fall. Make sure it's got fresh oil in there because the last thing you want to do is have an engine seize up on you. If you haven't done it before, or if you're not familiar with it, learn how to change your shear pins in a snowblower. And if you're listening to this, you're like, what the hell is shear pins? Thanks for dropping in, Souls. I appreciate it. It was nice to see you, man. I always love your stories too, so thank you. So your shear pins are the pins that go around the spindle that your beater blades, your snow, the blades that chew up the snow and then spit it out. So they're designed, they're a sacrificial metal. They're softer. They have a pre-cut piece in them so that if you say suck up your neighbor's cat or, an electrical cord, or say a piece of carpet that a customer swears wasn't under there until you started blowing snow, those pins are going to break before the entire drive assembly wrecks in your snowblower. So know how to inspect them, have lots on hand. They've gotten expensive. They're like $5 a piece now, but whatever. I try to keep about 10 of them on hand because they're cheap insurance. So have them, know how to replace them. That, if also another quick tip, a lot of times they'll break off and get jammed in there. Just take a nail, rotate it, take a nail, put it in the hole, and then tap it through, and that'll tap out the broken piece. So simple, easy, but just learn, right? Change out the spark plug. Now, here is the best tip I can give you for snowblowers. Buy one with a plug-in electric start because they are heavy, heavy, heavy. They're hard to pull. They have a big motor on them. And the worst thing is it tends to be really cold when you're getting ready to start them. And who wants to pull on a cold motor trying to get it to start? Don't do it. Get yourself an electric plug-in one, and then you can stand there and crank on it for 30 seconds until it starts because you don't have to worry about it. Now, here's a quick tip for you. I actually had a question about generators from, I think it was Kerry Brown today. And Kerry, if I'm wrong, I apologize. But he said that his electric start doesn't always work on his generator. I found out something new just recently. My dad's snowblower wouldn't start with the electric start. He pulled the electric start off. The electric start worked perfect. He called my uncle who runs an alternator generator shop. He's in his late 70s now, and he always worked with my grandfather. Super helpful. And he handy. He knows these things. So what he said was those electric starts, this is really interesting. They don't make them strong enough, or they're just strong enough. So if you guys have ever grabbed a hold of a pull cord to start an engine, and just grab it sometime on a generator or a snowblower and give it a pull, and you'll have high compression, low compression, high compression, low compression as the engine rotates. So what ends up happening is if your electric start is a little bit weak, or it was just a little undersized, if the motor ends up stopping on a high compression spot, there's not enough power in that electric motor to start it. So what you can do is grab your pull cord, give it a pull slowly until you feel kind of everything relax and you're in a low compression spot, and then hit your electric start. Really cool tip I just learned recently. So if Carrie, if you're listening, I answered your question, but I'll still do something for you on a video or something. Fuel line antifreeze, that was miserable. My snowblower was acting like a bastard. It was awful. It didn't work good. It was chugging and carrying on. I thought, okay, I'm going to add I added some seafoam. That helped clean it up a bit. But my brother-in-law said, you've got water in your gas. I thought, well, I've had watery gas before, but that was from eating beans. And he said, no, put, fuel line antifreeze in there. And after I run that entire tank through, the thing run like a top after that. So remember, here's another one not everybody thinks about. If your snowblower happens to be two-stroke, for instance, make sure you have mixed gas ahead of time. Because again, the last thing you want to have to do is run to the gas station to get gas, or even just be mixing up gas in the middle of a snowstorm. So make sure you get yourself a good 2.5 gallon or 5 gallon jug of mixed gas, and your life will be just a little bit better, Now here is another one. Ask yourself a question. Where do I keep my snowblower? So for me, I live in my home and my snowblower stays in my garage. And my garage is, I don't know, 75 feet from the house. Now, if it snows really bad and you get really bad drifts and you've got to climb over big piles of snow, how are you going to get from your home to your snowblower? Just think of that. Have a plan in place. I don't know, get out and walk through the snow a bunch of times as it's snowing to just beat a path down, whatever it is. But have a plan in place to make sure your snowblower is accessible when it snows, because the worst thing that could ever happen is your snowblower stuck in a garage because there's too much goddamn snow and you can't get to it. Tire chains. You can buy cheap tire chains for your snowblower on Amazon. Like, I mean cheap, and they work. And I haven't bought any yet, but they look good. So I'm going to check them out. But they really do help. I find that my snowblower works really good, but it still slips and slides a little bit. When you're all said and done, when you put it away or when you're even starting it up, just check it all over for loose bolts. Those snowblowers vibrate like a son of a bitch, and they're just all they ever want to do is vibrate parts out of them. And I've had a bunch of parts fall off my snowblower over the last couple of years simply because they ended up vibrating and buzzing out. So just keep an eye on that stuff. Tighten it down before it falls off, and use a little bit of non-permanent Loctite on some of that stuff. And thank you, Ted. Ted says, do not forget to hit that thumbs up for Toolman Tim's workshop. Thank you, sir. And yes. So Chris says chains are a game changer. I'm going to get some, and I'm actually going to buy a second snowblower next year because I'm paranoid as all get out that if my snowblower breaks, I do not want to shovel by hand. So, okay, number 10, last one here, guys. Don't forget about after winter storm maintenance. So we started the night with, what do we do when all the crazies are out and it's just starting to snow? Well, what do we do after it snowed, right? So once you get your emergency snow done, and I call that like you get your driveway open, you get your pathway to your garage open, you get your front walkway open. That's it, right? Okay, good. Now, a few other things. Push your snow banks back, right? So if you've got piles of snow, start moving them around, get them out of the way so that it's not going to melt and run into a walkway and somebody's going to slip and fall and trip. Another thing, if you've got a snowblower and all you did was a path, say on your front sidewalks, well, go out, and what I do is I take about a half of a width of the snowblower into the grass, and I go down both sides of the sidewalk that way. And what that ends up doing is it opens up, bare ground so that as the snow melts, the water runs into the soil instead of onto the sidewalks and creating ice. So just something simple, but move back your snowbanks so that the water has somewhere to go when things start melting. Now, just because it's not snowing anymore and just because it's not cold out doesn't mean you might not still have some ice. So every day after the snow until things have melted, check out your slippery spots. Get out there, put aggregate down, put gravel, salt, whatever you can find. I've been using this hybrid good to -31 ice melt from Windsor or Sifto or something, and it's blue and it works really good. I like it. It doesn't leave a residue like regular rock salt, but doesn't it stick to your hands and your boots? When I'm done, I look like Papa Smurf. It's an awful thing, but the stuff does work, but it's expensive. So now after a snowstorm, this might be, maybe doesn't quite make sense, but make sure your sump pump's working, because if you live on the East Coast where my parents do, and they get 1.5 feet of snow one day, and then they get plus 15 Celsius the next, shit's going to melt and it's going to run in your basement. So make sure your sump pump's working, even though you're thinking, what do I need that for in the winter? Haul the snow down off your roof before it can get into your eaves, and pull your eaves troughs, your gutters right off your house. So just keep an eye on that. And then lastly, take a walk around the house afterwards and look for leaks. If it was a real nasty cold spell, things can freeze. Something that an area that a lot of people forget to check is your outdoor taps. They always they split a lot. Even if you get those frost-free ones, sometimes people just don't do what they should do, or the things, if they weren't put in on a bit of a downward slope toward the inside of the house, water will sit in there, and they're just made out of that cheap Chinese metal, and they split easy, and then you can end up having a really bad day. I've had to replace a few of them for customers over the years. So do a walk around inside and outside after a deep freeze, and just make sure that you don't have any unexpected leaks. Check in under your kitchen sink, your bathroom sink, because that's the type of area that just hides leaks like crazy, and you might not find it for a month, and then all of a sudden you've got rot and mildew and stench. And yeah, just keep an eye on it, guys. That's all. So I hope that was fun. I enjoyed it. I love talking about cold. I thought this would be a little bit different. I know we've been talking about the systems of the home, but I always had plans. I've got a whole great big long outline of all the different shows I'm going to do for Preparedness with you. And if you guys have suggestions, send them my way, because I love it. I got so many suggestions the last couple of days for generator videos from people. I appreciate it, because I want to make the content that you guys want to hear. But yeah, I had plans of always doing the 4 major disasters. Fire is the one that I have the least expertise in. So if anybody has any tips on, fireproofing the exterior of your home or dealing with wildfire, smoke, that kind of stuff, I'd love to hear them. But yeah, we're just going to jump around a little bit in the preparedness realm, just to keep things fresh, so that we don't feel like we're, what's the word? Like, I don't want to always feel like we're doing the exact same thing for you guys. I want to make sure my content's good for you and that you can come away with something you really enjoy. So I hope you enjoyed it tonight. So where do we go from here? Sunday night, really cool. For you who are listening on the Prepper Broadcast Network, you'll know this name already. But if you're just from the workshop, you may not. But Ryan, Ryan Buford, otherwise known as Prepper Dad from the Next Generation podcast, he's going to be on my live stream Sunday night with an interview. And I'm going to have him on. We're going to talk about preparedness and USB items. And this might sound funny, but he did an awesome show on it a while back, and I really wanted him to come on and talk about this. But he was talking about things like the new arc lighters, battery packs. It's unreal the amount of USB powered items that can double as preparedness items. So we're going to have a really cool chat all around that. And this has been a busy week. If you guys, I know there's been so much content come out, but if you want to go back and check it out, I was lucky enough this week to be on Unloose the Goose as well, it was a big deal for me. I was really excited. We had an awesome interview, or a roundtable collaboration, where we talked about local systems and how things can work locally long term. So it was just an awesome episode. It's been a great week, guys. I hope you guys have had a great week as well. I love putting out this content for you. I tell you all the time, but I mean it. There's so many people live streaming. There's so many podcasters out there. There's so many content creators. But for whatever reason, you guys choose to come and hang out with me for an hour or two a week in the workshop. And I really do appreciate it. So thank you, guys. And my wife and I are working on another little business venture. We haven't got it very far yet, but I'm pretty excited about it. It's going to be a Canadian thing. And I think it could end up, I don't know, hopefully be yet another notch in the income generating wheel for us. So I'm pretty excited, but I'll tell you more about that. And real soon, we got a contest coming up. It's going to launch on or just before Groundhog's Day, because for whatever reason, I love Groundhog's Day. And it's going to be a prepper gear giveaway. We're going to have 5 cool prizes with a bunch of ways to earn extra entries into the draw. So, and next Thursday will be the 9th episode of Preparedness, and we're going to talk about the exterior of the home, how to mitigate damages and things like that. And John, I always appreciate you coming in and hanging out with me, man. So thank you very much. Martinson family, thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. I appreciate it. And finally, Prepper Broadcast Network. I love them. James is awesome. I love being on here. And who's coming up after me on PBN this week is our favorite Strange Truth with Carl A.D. Brown. It's always a lively discussion centered around Christianity, preparedness, and the news stories nobody dares touch. So guys, if you're not listening to PBN, do me a favor, give them a shot. There's some incredible content out there. They're growing like crazy. I love being part of the PBN family, so check it out. Anyway, guys, that's it for me. As always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.